You're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to RBLR Lightning. My name is Jake Ricker, and alongside me on my first line today, it's Eureka Reeler. Eureka, I hope you're doing well. We have a lot of Lightning games to recap. It's been another crazy week for the Lightning, but first, we need to talk about some news. We got an official injury update on Brayden Point after he was tripped on a breakaway, crashed into the boards, and it did not look good initially. You could tell from the reaction of color commentator for the Lightning. His name is jumping on me at the moment, but you knew his reaction, knew it was a little shaky, and he is now officially out 4 to 6 weeks, which is definitely a bummer for the Lightning.
Yeah, but it's better than indefinitely.
That is absolutely right, because that's the unknown.
Point was just, we'll talk about this a little later, but he was this linchpin that was really getting things going for us in a multitude of ways, and we're already out Cooch, so to have Point go down, it really, really stressing, but now at least we know it's a month and a half that we have to deal with it.
And honestly, that's better than I expected. It's kind of the same thing with the Kucherov injury when we found out the official timetable on him. But the way Point was holding his hand, and it was the color commentator Brian Engblom. I'm now remembering his name. He has some of the greatest reactions, I think, in all of color commentators when he goes, "Ooh." Right, as the guy hits the boards, it wasn't good. But the way Point was holding his hand, it's the way he crashed into the boards hard. So you thought maybe he fractured something in his arm. Of course, Lightning haven't said specifically what the injury is, but you're thinking worst case scenario. He could be out 2-3 months. But 4 to 6 weeks is obviously only a month and a half. So I think that's not terrible for the Lightning. And the Lightning have been known to survive some pretty serious injuries. Obviously, they've dealt with injuries to Stamkos and Kucherov, the two big noticeable ones, and they had a Hedman injury to deal with in recent years as well. So it's not like this is uncharted territory for the Lightning. It's definitely a bummer. It's going to be an issue for the Lightning having to deal without Brayden Point. But it's better to get him healthy during the regular season, get back soon, and get back to 100% moving Brayden Point than having him being out, a very long extended period of time.
Yeah. Well, and this was a week we saw immediately kind of sandwiched in. We had 1 game with him, 2 games with him, but he gets hurt in the third. And then we have a crazy game in the first game without Point. So a lot to talk about. There's a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah, well, let's jump into those game recaps and go over some of these games. So the first one we have to talk about, who is actually our opponent tonight, as of this recording, is the Philadelphia Flyers, who the Lightning defeated 4-3 in the shootout. A game that went probably a little longer than most Lightning fans would have liked, but the Lightning got the job done. At the end of the game, Lightning were 1 for 3 on the power play in this game. So the power play, which we'll get to more as we go on in this show, showing a little bit of life after, they've had some issues trying to adjust without Nikita Kucherov. But they got one on the power play in this game. Brayden Point, as we just mentioned, was on the board. Matthew Joseph even got himself on the board as well tonight. And Joseph has played extremely well this year. I've been really impressed with his play, especially on the penalty kill. He's just had some issues finishing every once in a while, especially on those shorthanded chances. But he got one in the back of the net tonight. And then, of course, Steven Stamkos, who's been hot all year, as we talked about before. But the big news from this game was the Lightning. Was that third period, obviously, as the Lightning were able to score super late. Was Stamkos's goal, take that 3-2 lead, but then the Flyers tying things up with 8 seconds left. I don't know how many times this has happened, Eureka, but let me tell you something. My heart cannot take these last second goals anymore that have been happening on the Lightning. It's happened a few times.
That's what I was saying. It's becoming a trend. I know we were talking in our group chat here about it's now we've seen it again, and even this particular game, this was a comeback. They were down 2 goals after the first period. They scored
Correct.
2 goals, and so it's basically you have a 0-2 first, 2-0 second, and here we go. And Braden Point is the person who scores that power play. So now, not only did we make a good comeback, the power play is working for us. Let's go. Each team scores in the third. With in that flurry, it's a stalemate until Stammer gets one with like a minute 53. But then they're able to crowd the net in front of Vasi, and Garreau gets one with 8.1 seconds left. What did you see though? I want to know with this game, because we kind of see a facsimile of that in a couple different ways over the next 2 games. Was there? I don't know if it's just something in the water or whatever, but last week it was the overtime games. This week it's the shootout games, and there's kind of a pattern emerging with these 3 games. This was the first one that really stood out as like, well, we had the Detroit game in October where it was like 7-6 or some weird, outrageous score that had a lot of this where it's like they score, we score, they score, we score. What did you see in this game that maybe was a little bit of an omen for what we were going to see the next 2 games?
Well, it was those last couple of seconds. Even though Philly had the empty net at that point and had the 6-on-5 skater advantage, it seems like the Lightning have had a little bit of trouble clearing their own zone and getting pucks out, even if they have to ice them and ultimately do a face-off. But they haven't been able to get pucks out of their own zone, and Philly gets a couple players in the right spot, puts a shot on net. Next thing you know, it goes in the back of the net and ties this game. So, and that's been the big issue in this third period, which we'll get to. That you talk about omens. It's like as soon as this goal was scored, little did we know there was going to be a lot of third period issues in closing games out, which is weird, because the Lightning are normally very, very good at closing games in the third period. If you remember, in these last 2 years on these Stanley Cup runs, that was one of the things our announcers talked about all the time, was how good the Lightning were at playing a defensive game and shutting things down after they showed off their offensive power and got the lead.
Well, we kind of see little trickles in it, because we do get the win, right? We get the win against Philadelphia, but the next game is a loss against New Jersey, 5-3. And again, here we go. We turn the tables. We actually have a 2-1 lead after the first period, and we're even able to put an insurance goal after the second period. And then the third period happens, and they give up 4 goals. Now, this is where in that third period, Braden Point gets hurt, crashing into the boards, getting tripped. But overall, John Cooper was saying it was pretty simple. The other team outworked us, and when you get outworked, you're playing with fire. He says, quote, "When we got up 3-1, they thought this was going to be easy, and we got what we deserved." Was there, I don't know was there maybe arrogance that, they're being comfortable, they have this lead for most of the game, and then the third period comes along in this one, and the Devils just, they figure out a way to put 4 goals in the third period. It's ridiculous. What did you see in this game?
What it kind of reminded me of, Eureka, is the series against the Columbus Blue Jackets. When they got swept, they kind of thought they could coast through that series, in this instance specifically the third period, and it came back to bite them. Now, as you mentioned, you're right, there were a lot of close chances for the Lightning. You had that Braden Point where he was tripped and ran into the boards and nearly scored on that ensuing penalty shot, rang it off the post. There were a couple of other chances too during the empty net when the Devils were still trying to tie the game. Andre Palat hit one off the post and nearly put it in the back of the net to give the Lightning the insurance goal they needed at the time. So there were, a lot of instances where they just missed the net and they could have ended it. Ross Colton, I believe, in this game had a really close chance in front. To Blackwood's credit, he played a really good game in the third period and kept the Lightning off the board. But just defensively, there were so many breakdowns. They were given odd man rushes. Oh, this was also the game where the Lightning had a 2-on-0, and Blackwood somehow came across and made a fantastic save that shut the Lightning down. That could have given them a lead again as well. But, Blackwood playing so well, coupled with the fact that the Lightning were giving some odd man rushes back the other way, and they were just kind of playing almost slow, I guess is the best word, or a step behind the Devils, and the Devils came out, again, to their credit, and made the Lightning pay. So that was an alarming rate, and I'll bring up this stat now, and this again happened in the Wild game, which we'll get to, but the Lightning... First period, goals against. They've had 9 goals scored against them in the first period. Their goal differential is +4, which is not bad. Obviously, that means in the most part for the Lightning recently, they've been up after the first period. Yeah. Second period, 14 goals against, goal differential +3. Again, not too bad. You're winning the first and second period. But then listen to this. Goals against in the third period, 26. And the goal differential is a -6 for the Lightning. That is a major red flag. And this is where I think it kind of happened every once in a while to the Lightning earlier this season, where like the game in Toronto, the last game that we just talked about against Philly, those last second goals that kind of happened. This was where it kind of blew up in our faces and was like, whoa, hey, this is an issue, where they could not stop anything in the third period. And there was a lot that went right for the Lightning in this game in the first 2 periods. They had another power play goal again. The power play was moving along. It was actually the second unit that scored on that power play as well. Yes, it was. Which hadn't scored, basically the entire season, I feel like. But that third period was a major issue, and it cost them 2 points, and they were on a 9-game point streak at this point.
Well, you say you get Ruda getting the goal to start things off. It's only his second goal of the year. Maroon on the power play and Victor Hedman. So you get defensemen that are leading the way, and unfortunately, not a single offensive forward scoring in this game, in a game that had 8 goals between the two teams. But again, we do see point go down, but you're seeing some signs of life. The second unit on the power play doing well. Point at that point was still doing well. But what ailment is there for just being outworked? And to have Cooper coming out in the press conference and not throwing them under the bus, but just highlighting it in public,
and rightfully so.
This is I believe, these guys know exactly what they're saying. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're pulling a string and hoping for a response. When you have your number one forward now going down in the third, and you lose a really bad period that kills you and takes the game away, and you have a game and the next night, it's against a team that can score a lot of goals, and we'll get into that in just a second. But, at what point does the team have to really think about what Cooper is saying? Like, hey, we got smacked in the mouth. We got outworked.
Well, you thought that would happen in the next game, where they thought, okay, Cooper just called us out and we need to get our act together. Yeah. But it ended up not. So, I think that's still kind of a question we're wondering right now is when is that going to happen for this team? And I feel like it's now. The only other thing I can think of is we're also realizing how important Erik Cernak was to this team. He's been out for a little while right now. We're still waiting on his return. It sounds like he's close. I've been hearing maybe a week. He was in a red no contact jersey at practice earlier this evening, so that is a good sign. But Erik Cernak's been out for a little while, and I think we're starting to see not having him and the effect of some of those younger defensemen, maybe like Cal Foote, although he hasn't been too noticeable. I don't think he's been a big issue. Sergachev has still kind of struggled this year as well. But Cernak's been a really solid defenseman for the Lightning these last couple of years, especially, and this year as well. And not having him definitely hasn't helped the Lightning. But to get back to your point about when are these guys going to respond and when are they going to do, I mean, it's now. The time is now. They definitely need to step up on their defensive game and get things moving, because they've been fortunate, like in the Wild game, which we'll talk about in just a second here, to come away with points. But, when you're playing some of those top teams, you can't be doing this, especially come postseason. Now, unfortunately, we have a lot of time before then, and a lot will change by that point. But the time is now to respond.
Well, the note I had for the Minnesota game is that we maybe stole a victory from the jaws of defeat, because they did come out.
Great way to put it.
They did come out firing. I mean, here's Cirelli gets his 5th goal on the power play a minute into the game. Let's go. Now we're like, here we go. This is what we're talking about. And then 10 minutes later, Maroon puts one on the board too, and now we're up 2 goals midway through the first. Let's go. They give up a penalty. Ensuing power play is a goal for Minnesota, but you're still up 2-1. You scored on the power play. You got to feel pretty good. The second period, both teams score. So good stalemate. Another Cirelli goal, and with Cal Foote getting his first assist of the year. But it's good to see Cirelli. You're thinking, okay, someone's got to step up. Okay, well, here's Anthony Cirelli, a guy that had a long streak of not scoring last year. It was good to see him get on the board twice in this game.
With a broken nose as well.
Yeah, here we go, man. Maybe that's the aerodynamics, that broken nose. He's got a little bit of a wobble to him, and so they can't pick him up.
Something about it.
But here we go again. Here goes our mantra is like, we need to do better in the third. Minnesota scores 2 goals in the third. ABB gets a goal, but it's these 2 very, very late goals in the third that force overtime. And again, we're giving up a lead. We're up 2 with 3 minutes to go. You're feeling pretty confident. You're feeling really, really good. Minnesota pulls the goaltender, and you had brought this up earlier, but the turtling of when you're on this kind of empty net PK almost situation, they just can't clear it. They just cannot do it for 2 goals in a row. They're able to crowd the net, get in front of Elliott, who was in goal this game, which I'm sure you have notes on him, but just so many goals given up in regulation that force overtime. And then we get heroics, and so I'll pass it to you on that. Again, where are you feeling? But right before the overtime or right before the shootout, how are you feeling now, seeing 3 straight games with 3 bad third periods?
You're just feeling, as a fan, defeated at this point. And just like, man, here we go. It's like that meme from Franklin in GTA where he's walking back. He's like, oh no. Boy, here we go again. No. Here we go. It's just a recurring issue for them. It's like, what is going on? And I don't know if it's, the Lightning are afraid to maybe ice the puck, because we've seen that a lot this year, I think, from other teams around the NHL, is saying, listen, even if you have to ice the puck, like obviously that's a bummer, you got to stay out there and you can't make a change, but at least you get a couple seconds to breathe, you get another chance on the face-off to try and clear the puck the way you want to. But at least it gets it out of the zone and they have to stop and reset. The Lightning have not been able to clear their zone whatsoever. Not cleanly, not on an icing, not anything. They cannot get the puck out of the zone. The Wild keep getting shots on net. And again, it is with the net, the goalie pulled, but that's going to happen in games unless you're up, 4 goals at some point. Maybe they won't pull the goalie then, but, you're going to have something you have to fix. It's the big thing is clearing the puck. The Lightning have got to get better. Don't even worry about hitting the empty netter and getting an extra goal. Just get the puck out and get those changes, get your new fresh guys on the ice and lock it down defensively. They kind of lost that art for the Lightning recently, and hopefully they'll be able to find it soon. Because I don't, like I said earlier, I don't know if I can take it much more in having these goals. Because like the one against the Wild, they scored with 19:21 with 20 seconds left. I mean.
Yeah.
Right at the end of it, you're like, okay, we got it. You know, they scored one late, but it's all right. We're going to hold on to the two. Oh, nope, never mind. We're going to have to go to overtime here again. But you mentioned Brian Elliott being in this game. This is now his third game that he's played in this year. Obviously, ended up getting the win in the shootout, so he is now 2-1 in his 3 appearances. And honestly, I think he's looked pretty decent. I know there were a lot of goals scored in this game, and there were a lot of goals scored in like the Senators game, which is the last game he played in. But that's not always his fault. Again, last 2 goals come with empty net for the Wild and the Lightning not playing well defensively. But Elliott has made some solid saves, and he's been, I think, pretty good overall for Lightning as a backup. I'm very excited to see him really get into his own. Again, this is still early for him as he's only played 3 games, but I think he looks pretty decent. And for anybody worried, saying, oh, well, he's got a bad save percentage, letting in a lot of goals, listen, to be fair to Brian Elliott, and basically any backup goaltender that comes in here and gets compared to Andrei Vasilevsky, you're just not going to win that battle. You're just not. I mean, Andrei Vasilevsky is so good and so unbelievable that you could put anybody back there. Even some starters on other teams probably would look bad behind Andrei Vasilevsky. Sure. That's how good he is. But I think Brian Elliott's been solid. He was great in the shootout in this game.
3 big saves.
Yep, he stopped everybody. And then obviously Steven Stamkos was the one that put in the back of the net for the Lightning, which was huge. And they get the win in the shootout and get that extra point. So the good news for the Lightning is they haven't been losing all of these third period collapses, but it's something you would obviously like to fix relatively quickly. I will mention as well, I've been noticing Ross Colton a lot in these last couple of games. Okay. I think he's trying to get that monkey off his back right now. He has not been able to get a puck in the back of the net. He's had so many close chances. He was almost scored on this one in the shootout. I mentioned in the last game too, Blackwood denied him on a couple big chances. Ross Colton is knocking on the door right now, but just has not been able to finish off some of those chances. And we'll get to this in a second as we go back to the Braden Point injury. But Eureka, he might be the one we need to step up as Braden Point is out for these next 4 to 6 weeks.
That was going to be a question as we kind of now go more big picture. The Bolts are 5-2 over the last 7 games. You know, they won 2 out of the 3 as heart inducing as it was for you over there, man. But that's the big question: is who is going to step up? We need someone out of this bottom 6 to feel the 20 or so minutes that Point provides, quality minutes that the Point provides for the Lightning. You had talked about Colton, and we're looking at Cirelli stepping up for this week for sure. But we're looking at a guy that some on the internet are calling, there's always an opinion. If you turn over a rock on the internet, you're going to get an opinion. And there seems to be a prevailing opinion about Corey Perry. And if you look at his stat line, he has a very glaring kind of red light going off. It's not a siren yet, but he hasn't scored a goal in now 37 games. So is it not just the young guys? Of course, we're looking at ABB, who was brought in, kind of put right on that Stammer line, and he ended up getting a goal in this game. But should we be looking at that 4th line or 3rd line with Perry, Belmar, Maroon? Maroon's putting pucks in the net, but what about Corey Perry, our aging free agent guy that we picked up here? What say you?
I'm going to have to go and say no on this one, and here's why. So obviously with Braden Point, my pick is Ross Colton to be stepping up. You mentioned ABP. He's obviously the one that gets slotted in that line of the top line, and he's a guy that I think definitely step up as well. But for Corey Perry, yes, he definitely hasn't scored as much as fans would have liked him to. I'm sure he would like to score some more goals.
Right.
But the quote-unquote Scory Perry, as his nickname once was, that was the old Corey Perry. If you remember Corey Perry in recent years, it wasn't for his scoring ability. Sure, he got a couple goals here and there, which was always a nice bonus. But that's not what he was brought to this team to do. He was brought on this team to continue the legacy of guys like Cedric Paquette, be that physical force down low, annoy the crap out of other teams as he did to us for so many years. I mean, Andre Vasilevsky literally punched him in the head because he was so sick of Corey Perry. So, of course, I would like to see him score more as an added bonus. That's always nice. If he can step up, that's great. But it's not what I look for in Corey Perry. He does have a couple of points. You mentioned Pat Maroon. He's been playing well in these last couple of games as well. So I'm not concerned about Corey Perry because I don't think that's why the Lightning brought him here. He's meant to be more of a gritty, defensive, tough guy, if you will. And that's what that whole fourth line kind of is, Perry and Pat Maroon, two of the biggest, toughest guys on the Lightning roster. I'm not worried about Corey Perry because I don't think that's what he's brought here to do. Hopefully he will get out of the slump eventually and start scoring some goals. That's always, an added bonus, but he's not the guy I'm immediately looking at and saying, can you please replace Braden Point? Because that is a very tall task, especially for a guy like Corey Perry.
Do you think ABB slotted in here? Do you think that there's an opportunity for another guy, maybe Kachuk or Radish or someone on the wing there?
Absolutely. Kachuk and Radish, they're the two. I think they've been playing very well to start this season. I've liked what I've seen from them. Obviously, they haven't scored a ton of goals or anything like that, but they're the rookies. They're the rookies for the year this Lightning. You look at like last year for Ross Colton. He had a breakout year, and is the reason he got a nice little contract in this last off season. Yeah. So those are the guys you look at for sure as the ones that step up. They're like, you're the rookies that we brought up this year. This is your chance to show why you're here in the big leagues and playing for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Again, I think they've played well for the most part. And anytime you're a new guy on a team trying to learn your way, build chemistry with your line, which I think they've kind of found a nice line with those two guys as well, which is good. So that is only going to get better for them here in the future. But they've been playing well, and this is their big chance to really show why they are here and up and why they won out for those roster spots in training camp.
As we transition now and kind of look towards the next week of games, there's one more big question, a big picture question. It's kind of like, in this week, I think we kind of saw the plan to rely on our top-notch goaltending and win possibly very low-scoring games. And I kind of think they just ended up just blowing it in 3 straight games with this plan. But, Vasilevsky absolutely on his A game right now. He's looking very composed. He's looking, like he's ready to step up, knowing that there's going to be an absence of offense. So, is that? Am I seeing the tea leaves the right way, where we're kind of playing to play low-scoring games and just kind of get these 2-1 wins, 1-0 wins, and it's just blowing up in our place? Or is there a different way you think we're going to attack the Philadelphia, Seattles, and Minnesotas that we'll play next week?
Well, the Lightning's identity has always been that high-powered, crazy offensive scoring type of team. But obviously without Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov, two of your top scorers on this team, that's going to become a lot harder. So obviously they would like to keep that identity. And as we talked about, having guys like Kachuk, Radish, ABB step up and start to score some goals. Even Alex Killorn, who's been very solid in the scoring department this year. I think that's what they would like to happen, but I think they understand right now they're going to need their goaltending to step up. They're going to need to get much better defensively because they might take a hit in the scoring department without guys like Nikita Kucherov and now Braden Point as well.
Well, the first game is a game against Philadelphia, a team that we beat last week with a number 2 goalie in net, but it seems like they're going to have their number 1 in there. They're also dealing with some injuries. Ryan Ellis was a big pickup for them. He hasn't played a ton, and Kevin Hayes was a scratch in the lineup for the last few games. But here's a good stat that you might be interested in knowing. Philadelphia has lost 8 straight regular season games to Tampa Bay. I believe you're going to the game tonight, if I have that right. And
yes, sir. I will be there loud and proud.
Do you expect the Bolts to extend that to a 9th straight victory over the Philadelphia Flyers?
Oh, I certainly hope so, because if they keep losing when I'm in attendance, that's going to be a problem for me in the future.
Yeah,
but, listen, Philly, I think they're a solid team. They've had some issues this year. Carter Hart's been kind of up and down. You don't know what kind of Carter Hart you're going to get. I think he's also been very solid in some games, and he's struggled in a couple of them as well. But, Philly's a solid team. I don't think they're a bad team. I don't think they're like a really good team either. They're kind of middle of the pack. Again, on paper, this is a game the Lightning should win, but as we talked about, no Braden Point, no Nikita Kucherov. You do have Vasi in net tonight, so if the Lightning can have those younger guys step up a little bit, they can get a couple of goals early, and here's the most important thing, right? They can shut things down defensively in the third and hold the fort. Then they should absolutely win this game. But if they struggle and let Philly walk back into this game, it's going to be tough to win shootouts in overtime all the time. The Lightning have been fortunate that they've been pretty good in overtime in the shootouts for the most part so far this year, but it's just not going to work out that way for you all the time. So the biggest thing I look for tonight is if we have a lead going into the third period, are they going to step up defensively tonight? I certainly hope they do, obviously, but again, on paper, this is a game they should be able to win. The good news for the Lightning, though, is it does get a little bit easier after that, going up against the Seattle Kraken, which will be a fun game because it'll be the first time that Yanni Gourde returns to Tampa Bay. So I'm sure the Lightning will have a nice little tribute set up for him. It'll be nice to see Yanni Gourde back here at Ambly, unfortunately wearing a different sweater this time, though, but Seattle has also just not been good this year, as you expect with most expansion teams, unless you're Vegas and be the one weird outlier. But that's a game you expect the Lightning to put up maybe 6-7 goals at some point there, because Seattle has struggled a lot this year.
Yeah, I mean it's tough, but expansion years you get a win. I mean, we saw Vegas come out of the blocks, but they kind of had some rules that the Kraken didn't get to take advantage of with such a short turnaround, that other GMs were like, yeah, we're not going to fall for the same tricks that we got fleeced and made a Stanley Cup contender immediately out of the gate. But the last other two games, Minnesota again and St. Louis, a week exactly from when we're recording this on Tuesday night. Any big things you're kind of thinking of? I mean, those are 6 and 7 days away, but what are we looking for down the rematch in Minnesota and seeing the Blues?
Well, Minnesota, we showed we can handle them. We played really well against Minnesota for the most part, minus the third period. So obviously, the third period thing is something that goes into all of these games. That's something they have to fix every time. It's not like it's a problem against one team or something like that. But they should be able to handle Minnesota, I think, for the most part. They've played pretty well against them. The big game I look at between those two is the St. Louis Blues. The St. Louis Blues have played pretty darn good this season. I've been impressed by them so far this year. So that's going to be a tough game. It's in St. Louis. It's an 8 o'clock start as well for the Lightning, which has been one of the later starts recently for the Bolts. So obviously won't have a huge effect on anything, but you never know, because the Lightning seem to play really bad in the earlier afternoon type of games for whatever reason. So maybe they play better in the later time slots. But that Blues game will be a fun one to watch, I think, because the Blues have been a good team, and that should be a good battle all the way up into the end.
Well, my last little thing, man, put you on the spot. We didn't talk about this beforehand. It's not in the show notes, but we got Thanksgiving coming up this Thursday. A huge matchup between you and your plate. What is your lineup? What are we going with for our Turkey Day? Or maybe you don't do turkey. Maybe you're doing something different.
That's a great question. I love it. Well, I'm a turkey guy. I love some good turkey with some gravy. You can't ever go wrong. I'm a big stuffing guy is one of my sides. I love me some good stuffing as well, and maybe some sweet potato casserole. I love some sweet potatoes. So I will definitely have I'll definitely have a lot of colors on my plate. I can promise you that. And hopefully it'll be while eating after a nice Lightning victory tonight, and then continuing that streak after Thanksgiving as well. So it's gonna be fun. What about you though, Eureka?
Yeah, man.
What about you? Where are you going for the Thanksgiving plate?
The wife is she has already alerted me that we are switching things up. I'm usually a big turkey guy. We usually do the whole big production, but this week we're paring it down, a little smaller. We're doing some. She already got the ham, side dishes. I mean, I'm a big potatoes and gravy guy. I'm with you on the stuffing. I'm obviously with you on the casserole, the yams, man. But here's an X factor. I don't know you're up or down on cranberry sauce. If it's done right, and not in moderation. I'm not saying pile it on your plate, but in moderation, that little bit of cranberry sauce is what can really get it done in the third period and set you home. And I'm a big pumpkin pie guy. How do you feel about pumpkin pie, or is there a different pie that's making your way into the dessert lineup?
I've never been a really big pie guy. It's just because I fill myself up, and by the time pie rolls around, I'm like, oh boy, I just can't stuff myself anymore. But it sounds like maybe the Lightning you're talking about, cranberry being a good third period closer there. Maybe the Lightning should be eating some cranberries to fix their third period woes.
Yeah, we might get something started on Twitter here. So well. But it was really fun being able to be the ABB to this lineup tonight. Chris wasn't able to make it, but here I am. So my skates still fit, and it was a blast doing this with you, Jake.
Absolutely, man. You still glided across, no problem. And of course, wanted to give a shout out to the listeners. Thank you guys so much for tuning in once again. But don't forget to follow us on Twitter as well at RBLR Sports for all of your latest news on all of the great Tampa Bay teams. We got some exciting things coming up, Eureka. We got the Rowdies going to the championship game this Sunday. That's going to be a lot of fun. Cannot wait. Yes. For them to hopefully continue the Tampa Bay traditions and keeping the winning going here in Tampa Bay. So excited for that coming up.
Yeah, come on, you Rowdies. Let's get that third star, and of course, go Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.